What's up guys, it's me Jeremy. We've been making a few more videos in a more educational or informative format lately thanks to the help of our challenger analysts that we're working with behind the scenes. But most of the player base is nowhere near the highest levels of play where some of those challenger tricks are going to make a big difference. So today I wanted to cover some of the more common mistakes that players make as well as things that they can do to improve. And instead of obsessing over the smaller sort of minor details that maybe you might not know about that only really matter at higher levels of play, we're going to be focusing on some of the more common things that lower elo players definitely should improve on, and overall some really incredible things that you need to do if you want to climb. Hopefully these tips will be even more beneficial than some of our other videos, so if you enjoyed the video, please leave a like on it or let us know in the comment section below, and be sure to subscribe for some more videos. So our number 10 tip for today is to focus more on your warding. There was a time in League of Legends history where warding was kind of the support's job, but those days are just years behind us now. The introduction of trinkets makes it easy for everyone to get involved, but you should really be buying control wards throughout the entire game. If you have a spare 75 gold and an empty item slot after visiting the base, always pick up a ward and definitely make sure you're finding a useful place to put it. It's even worth selling Doran's items to buy control wards if you're finding yourself without space in the late game. It's a tiny investment that could definitely be the difference between winning a team fight and taking some objectives, or getting picked off and losing the game because someone got caught and then there's a resulting 4 vs 5 fight. The statistics don't lie. I mean, the more control wards you buy on average, the higher your elo is, also on average. You don't need to know the perfect control ward spots right now, just focus on buying them and sticking them somewhere where they can watch your back. I mean, it's the easiest thing you can do to supercharge your gameplay, and it's going to be well worth the 75 gold just about every time. And at number 9, you want to work on improving your map awareness. So wards are only going to help if you also have the habit of looking at your mini-map. So train yourself to definitely look over at it periodically, every 5 to 10 seconds or so, and generally just really pay attention to what's going on in the rest of the map. I mean, good players are almost always looking at the mini-map to stay aware of anything that happens, especially if you're a solo laner that's trying to avoid getting ganked or something like that. Focusing entirely on winning your lane is an easy mistake to make since it usually results in you getting ganked and losing anyway. So look at the minimap whenever you can spare a second and definitely get yourself in the habit of doing it and building that sort of strong, good habit. You'll find yourself dying to ganks much less often, and it'll also help you develop a much more strategic approach to when it comes to choosing which objective to go for. Speaking of objectives, definitely focus on them. So our number 8 tip for today is that you should always be playing for objectives. The first objective you have is to gather gold, so focus on efficient farming while avoiding damage from the enemy laner, and if you can maybe harass them enough to force them back, you can start looking at outer turrets either by pushing your own lane or roaming to help another. Sometimes you might win a team fight and your entire team will chase down a straggler, but even in those situations, you probably want to leave and just spend your time taking down a tower instead. The global gold will put your team ahead, and objectives are worth so much more than kills, and at the end of the day, League of Legends is an objective focused game, so definitely try to avoid getting sucked into the sort of clown fiesta and focus on those objectives. Coming in at number 7, we have another tip that relates to focus, but this time you want to turn that focus towards yourself. Ask yourself if you are truly in the best mental state that you can be before you actually jump into a ranked game. You don't want to be hungry, tired, really stressed out, or in a bad mood, or have any other distractions if you want to play at your best. A distracted mind is more likely to tilt or play badly, and those losses are going to add up and stop you from climbing, and it's only going to make any potential issues you're dealing with a whole lot worse. It might not seem like a huge deal, and honestly, this is probably one of the more commonly ignored tips, but being relaxed, feeling positive can bring you a huge advantage if you want to play at your best and climb the ladder. Now, of course, once you're actually in a game, there's not really that much you can do about negative or toxic teammates. However, our number 6 tip is that you shouldn't be afraid to dodge if things aren't looking great in the pre-game lobby. Toxic teammates are never going to be fun to play with, and troll picks are probably going to lose you the game anyway. Dodging simply just makes so much sense all the time, even from a mathematical perspective. Your first dodge only costs you a tiny 3 LP, which is a lot better than the 20 plus you might lose from the game. And it's just a small 5-minute wait before you can queue up again. The second dodge is maybe a little bit more harsh with 10 LP and a 30-minute wait, but it's still way better than playing a toxic game, having the only reward be a ton of lost LP, and overall just having a crappy experience. You know, you don't lose MMR rating when you dodge, so there's actually really no disadvantage to it. You're gonna make up the lost LP in future wins down the line. Definitely exercise your best judgment and maybe don't dodge for absolutely no reason, but never stick around in a toxic lobby, especially if you think it's gonna cost you the game. Now our next pick for the number 5 tip is to thoroughly learn at least 1 or 2 champions for an off roll. You know, there's few things that suck as bad as getting your off rolled and feeling like you have no chance to carry in the game whatsoever. Choose a second favorite role and practice your off roll, practice some champions in a normal game and get some level of experience and comfort with them. Once you get comfortable on your off roll picks, you'll be a much more flexible player in general, and that'll result in a lot more wins. It can also be a huge help to pick 2 roles that may be share champions. Certain junglers work well as top laners, or some mid laners can double as aggressive caster supports. So maybe if your main role is jungle, maybe pick up that same champion that you're playing in jungle, start playing them in top lane so it's kind of more familiar. You know, find a champion pool or a role that suits you and kind of just makes sense to transition to from what you're already playing, and sort of allow that to bleed over so that you can play your best and even have a really good shot at carrying when you aren't in your number 1 most preferred role, because the reality of the situation is you're going to get your off roll a lot, so you better be prepared for it. Now, our tip number 4 is a bit of a reality check, and it's honestly probably one of the biggest differences I see between higher elo players and lower elo players, and that's that it's going to take you hundreds of games to improve and actually be able to climb in the long run. You know, it's easy to pick up on a few of the tips we maybe discussed in this video so far, start applying them to your game, and you might be able to see some instant benefits, but climbing in general takes a long time. Statistically, you aren't going to see a huge jump in your win rate until you put in the hours to improve and actually play those games, as well as playing enough games to have your actual win rate shine through among the trolls or the bad games or everything else. You can have a losing streak where you drop pretty far but still be improving overall, and rushing is just going to make you get tilted and make those losses even more difficult to deal with, and you're just going to be frustrated. You know, the best players will play thousands of games every season, and while you don't need to dedicate your life to it, and of course everyone has their own different situation, you know, not everyone can play League of Legends for 4 hours a day or more. But the reality is that improving requires a pretty significant time investment that you need to be willing to commit to. Keep in mind that you can learn a lot from even just 1 loss, and an hour of gameplay is spent better if you focus on your mistakes rather than playing on autopilot and kind of just trying to ignore it and move past it. Now, breaking into the top 3, we've got some pretty big ones, and it's a lesson in patience, and that is to wait for your enemy to make mistakes. People kind of easily get roped into this idea that the aggressive playstyle is the best way to carry, and for me, I've always been a fan of aggressive playstyles, if anything because it's just more fun. But honestly, more often than not, you can just be patient and let your opponent outplay themselves. I mean, this is something that happens even in Challenger, and the lower elo you're in, the more often mistakes will happen, so simply wait, play the safe game, and keep your eyes open for your opportunity to punish your enemy. Rushing can sometimes lead to tilt or mistakes or desperate plays, and safe gameplay often avoids that. Learn to capitalize on your enemy's mistakes and take advantage of every opportunity they give you. Just don't try and force it all the time. Now, our number 2 most useful tip to climb is actually to focus on easy to play but effective champions. A lot of people assume that we're calling lower elo players mechanically bad when we say this, but that's not the case at all. You know, the less demanding a champion is to play, the thing is that the more you can focus on other game elements like farming, roaming, optimizing your items, your mechanics, and other stuff like that. People kind of tend to jump onto the meta champions, which is fine, unless there's something that's maybe way too complex for you or something that you haven't actually put in the time to learn properly. There's tons of super easy to play effective champions that you can learn that will work in almost any metagame. You know, there's a big reason why easier to play champions have higher win rates. And I gotta say, at the end of the day, this is a video about climbing. It's not a video about having fun. So take that with a little bit of a grain of salt. You know, having fun while you're playing is still very important. But if you just absolutely 100% only want to focus on climbing, playing easier champions is definitely a great option for you. Now, our last tip for today, and number 1 most useful tip to climb and gain elo in League of Legends, is to focus on your own gameplay and don't care about other people's gameplay. You can go from having a gold level mentality to a diamond one overnight, but that's not going to change your teammates. With that in mind, you always want to be thinking about what you can do to help win the game, to carry, rather than worrying about your low skill bot lane, making low skill plays, and going 0-8 by 8 minutes. You know, you're going to lose a game now and again because of your team. It happens to everyone, but you can always do something better in every game ever. And that's why you need to learn from your mistakes. You know, there's something you can learn from every game, and self-improvement is the only real way to climb in solo queue. It's kind of the entire system is designed around that. So always put the focus on yourself, let go of any frustration with your teammates, and allow yourself to improve. That's going to be it for today's top 10. Hopefully some of these tips will help some of you guys in your climb. You know, you probably knew about most of these already, but it's good to just keep them in your mind and thinking about them and just implementing them the best you can. Either way, looks like that's going to be it for this one. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.